I was not supposed to be here. Not in this quiet village buried under a fresh sheet of snow in Devon. Not chasing something that most people had already dismissed as superstition dressed up as curiosity. But the letter I received 3 days ago would not let me rest. Its words were too precise, too deliberate to ignore. It did not speak of ghosts or devils. It simply described footprints, hoof-like, evenly spaced, appearing overnight after a heavy snowfall on the 8th of February, 1855, stretching for miles across the countryside, over rooftops, across frozen rivers, through walled gardens, as if whatever made them had no regard for obstacles or boundaries. And what unsettled me most was not the pattern itself, but the consistency. Each mark identical, each step measured, like something was not walking but being placed. Carefully, intentionally. Now, as I stood at the edge of the village, my boots sinking into the same snow that had once recorded those impossible tracks, I could feel the weight of every eye on me. The villagers watched from behind half-open doors and frost-covered windows. None of them spoke, none of them came closer, as if even acknowledging the matter too loudly might bring it back. The man who finally approached me did so reluctantly. His face was saying, his voice low. He told me I was too late. That most of the prints had already melted or been trampled, but there were still some left beyond the fields, near the old church, a place no one dared to go any more. When I asked him why, he hesitated, not out of ignorance, but out of fear. The kind that settles deep into a person, the kind that does not need explanation. All he said before turning away was this: whatever made those tracks did not come into the village. It passed through it, as if it had somewhere else to be, somewhere it was going with purpose. And as I made my way toward the church, the silence around me began to feel wrong. Not the quiet of winter, but the absence of something that should have been there. No birds, no wind brushing the trees, not even the distant sound of movement, just the faint crunch of my own footsteps. Then, just as the church came into view through the fog, I saw them, faint but unmistakable, pressed into the snow ahead of me, a single line of hoof-shaped impressions, perfectly spaced, leading straight toward the church door and stopping just short of it. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the final imprint in the snow just inches from the church door, waiting for something to make sense, for some flaw in the pattern to reveal itself, but there was none. The spacing remained exact, the depth consistent, as if whatever had made them did not hesitate, did not slow, did not even pause before reaching the door, and yet it had not entered. I stepped closer, careful not to disturb the prints, my breath visible into the cold air, and I noticed something I'd not expected. The snow inside each hoof mark was slightly darker, not by much, just enough to feel wrong, as though the snow there had been disturbed differently, pressed with more intent than force. I crouched down, brushing my glove lightly against one of the impressions, and the moment I touched it, a strange unease passed through me. Not pain, not cold, but a feeling I could not place, like touching something that did not belong to the world around it. I pulled my hand back immediately, my pulse quickening, and for a brief moment I had the overwhelming urge to step away, to leave the place entirely, but I did not, because that is the problem with curiosity. It convinces you that understanding is worth the discomfort, even when every instinct tells you otherwise. I turned my attention to the church itself. The wooden door aged and slightly warped, its surface marked by the years of weather and neglect. But there was something else. Faint marks near the handle, thin lines in the frost, not scratches, not quite, more like impressions, as if something had rested there, something shaped differently than a human hand. I reached out slowly, hesitating just before touching the door, and that same feeling returned, stronger this time, a quiet resistance like the air itself had thickened, warning me without words. I told myself it was nothing, just the cold, just the tension of the situation, and I pushed the door open. It creaked softly, the sound echoing unnaturally in the silence around me, and the moment it opened, I felt it. Not saw, not heard, but felt it. The kind of awareness you get when you enter a place where you are not alone, even if there is no one in sight. The interior was dim, the light from outside barely reaching past the entrance. The air inside colder than it should have been, still untouched. And then I noticed the floor, faint traces of melted snow leading inward. Not a full trail, just enough to suggest movement. But the shape was wrong, inconsistent, as if whatever had been outside had not needed to leave clear prints once it was inside. I stepped in despite myself, the door closing behind me with a dull thud that felt far louder than it should have, and for the first time since arriving in the village, I felt something I could not explain away. Not fear, not yet, but the quiet certainty that whatever had made those tracks had not stopped at the door, it had simply changed the way it moved, and now I was standing exactly where it had chosen to go. I do not know how long I stood there, just inside the church, listening to nothing, watching nothing, and yet feeling watched in a way that was far too deliberate to ignore, the kind of presence that does not move but makes you aware that it could at any moment. I told myself to leave, to step back outside, to follow the same path I had taken to get here. But when I turned toward the door, I froze, because the faint traces in the melted snow I had noticed moments ago were no longer leading inward. They had shifted, subtly, and possibly. They were now deeper, more defined, and they were no longer ahead of me, they were behind me, closer to where I stood, as if something had adjusted its position without making a sound, without leaving a trail, just closer, my breath caught in my throat, my mind scrambling for anything rational, any explanation that could hold together long enough to steady me. But there was none, because the pattern I had followed all the way to this place had broken, and in breaking it revealed something far worse. Whatever had made those tracks did not simply pass through the village, it chose where it stopped, and it had stopped here. I forced myself to look around slowly, carefully, expecting movement, expecting something to reveal itself in the dim light, but the church remained empty, the pews still, the air unmoving, and yet the feeling persisted, stronger now, not just being watched, but being observed, studied with a kind of quiet patience that made my skin crawl. And then I heard it, not a sound exactly, more like a shift in pressure, a subtle change in the space behind me, the kind of sensation that makes you aware of something standing just out of sight, close enough to reach you, close enough to touch. I did not turn immediately. I could not, because some part of me understood that the moment I acknowledged it, the moment I looked, something irreversible would happen. But fear is a strange thing. It does not always make you run. Sometimes it forces you to confirm what you already know, and so slowly I turned, expecting something, anything, but there was nothing there, only the faint outline of the doorway, the pale light filtering in and the disturbed snow near the entrance. Except now there was one more mark than before, a single fresh imprint closer than the rest, not leading anywhere, not following a path, just placed there, as if it had been set down deliberately after I entered. And in that moment I understood something that has stayed with me long after I left that place, long after the snow melted and the village returned to its quiet routines. Those tracks were never a trail. They were not leading from one place to another. They were not the record of movement. They were a record of presence, something moving not through distance but through space itself, peering where it chose, stepping where it wished. And if that is true, if those marks were not a path but a pattern, then the final imprint I saw inside that church was not the last step of something that had arrived. It was the first step of something that had decided to stay. And even now, when I think back to that day, to that statement, to that feeling of being quietly, patiently observed, there is one detail I cannot explain, one detail I have never spoken of until now, because it is the only thing that makes no sense at all. When I finally gathered myself and left the church, retracing my steps back through the snow, I noticed something that should not have been possible, something that should not exist if what I experienced had ended when I walked away. My own footprints, the ones I had made coming toward the church, were no longer alone. They were accompanied by another set, identical in spacing, identical in depth, running perfectly alongside mine, step for step, as if something had walked with me the entire way, not ahead, not behind, but beside me, matching me exactly, all the way back to the edge of the village. And I do not remember hearing it. I do not remember seeing it. But I know with a certainty I cannot shake that whatever it was never following me. It was simply waiting for me to notice that it had always been there.